Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Sauble Source Protection Authority meeting of Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. Call the order to meeting, meeting to order. Oh, it's been a long morning. And call for the adoption of the agenda. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I am. It's on there. And seeing nothing, moving on to the adoption of the minutes of March 26, 2025 SPA meeting. Everybody's had a chance to look at those in the agenda package. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Oh, Tim is, hang on one second. Okay, may I have a mover, seconder, Member Mackey, Vice Chair Dubik. Thank you. Any questions, comments on the minutes? Seeing nothing, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Correspondence, there is nothing at this time, and there's also nothing at this time for matters arising from the minutes. So then we will move to reports. Report 6A, program report is attached, and I will call on Carl to make the presentation.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Chair. Wanted to bring some updates for the committee, and the first one's around the karst study that was going to be taking place in reviewing the wellhead protection areas for the Kimberley AMIC system, as well as the Shallow Lake system. We got funding approval from the province to do the study, so we'll definitely taking the opportunity to learn more about these systems, given the karst nature of the area. We were relying on the expertise of Dr. Steve Worthington, who is a karst expert and was identifying some of the gaps in the original models that were done. And so we were able to go out just recently, and well, in the past year, we've been collecting data because we want to have as much information to inform the study in the models. So we collected data on rainfall and from the water treatment plant in terms of turbidity, and looking at how fast things are responding to big rain events in those systems, and in some cases they're in a number of hours they're seeing spikes in turbidity. We know that the areas could be extensively larger, that's influenced by surface water into the groundwater. We went out for a tender for the consulting contract on MERCS. We got 3 bids, which were all very competent, and we were able to choose the least expensive, which is great. And actually had a meeting with BlueMetric just this morning, just to talk about the scope of the project and what kind of data we have versus what kind of data gaps. So we're starting the work, even though the work's been going now for over a year in terms of collecting the data. So I'll be reaching out through the municipalities, in keeping them informed, but also what other information can we help to inform the study. And then if there are changes being planned to the plan or the areas, then we'll have to do consultation with the municipalities and affected landowners that may be captured.
Thank you. Just do you want to take questions on the fly, I'm presuming, Carl? So then Member Mackey.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Carl, for the follow-up on karst. Did you know what percentage of our source water of the Gray Sauble Conservation Authority would be have karst topography?
The majority of the area has some degree of karst in it. It just depends where it is in the soil or in the ground. If it's closer to the surface, it's definitely more responsive, and there's more interaction between the groundwater and the surface water. So that's the case for Kimberley and Shallow Lake. The karst is near the surface. There's fractures that allow for sediments or contaminants to move quickly. In other areas, so in Walkerton, there's karst there too, and you know it's a little further down in the soil profile, so there's a little more protection above it. So those are all factors that get inputted into the models that determine how fast things are moving and then how big an area of influence we would have.
Thank you. So our source protection mapping right now as it exists could drastically change based on this information that comes forward.
So the way we're treating it is anytime we update a new well, like if a new well is going in, we're going to use the best available information to delineate that protection zone. We're not planning to go back to all of our other existing protection zones and open them up for review at this time. These two were flagged as being more significant because of the nature of the system and the study that had identified the gaps. So we're going to focus on these two. If a new well, so there's a new well going in Durham, we're going to use the latest available information and data to delineate that new area. We're not planning to go into Chatsworth and open up the books, so to speak. I just skip right to your question. Yeah.
Member Dubik.
Thank you. And you know, from a Grey Highlands perspective, you know, the Kimberley Amick, you know, water treatment plant there, the turbidity is a very is a key concern, you know, given the ability to effectively and efficiently treat the water. So this study for the karst area up above that treatment plant is very important. So very happy to see the continuation of this project. Just wondering if you have any timelines for next steps.
Yeah, so the study is scheduled to take about 6 months to complete the study. In the meantime, we'll be still collecting data. We want to do some more field work. We want to, in the fall, get as much information as we can to inform the model and the analysis. After that report comes out, then we'll go into implementation of the study's recommendations, which could include consultation, could include discussions with landowners and the municipality to amend the source protection plan. And that could take, you know, another 6 months to a year, whatever it takes, yeah, to do it properly. Okay. Any other questions on that item? Okay. I'll continue to the next part. Yeah. So the other topic I thought would be of interest was the Auditor General's performance audit. And this was specifically looking at non-municipal and private drinking water systems across the province, and flagging the fact that while the majority of the folks are on municipal, there's still 3 million people in Ontario that are on these non-municipal systems or private, and for the most part, samples taken are showing that they're meeting standards. But in a number of cases where samples might not be taking or systems may have fallen through the cracks in terms of being flagged as small or non-municipal, this was identified as a gap. And also of the systems that were being inspected, some of them were not being inspected regularly, you know, or there were significant time delays in the repeat inspections. So we brought this up at our source protection committee. This is another area that, again, we've been asked to look into from a best management practices perspective. We're trying to partner, for one example, the Bruce Biosphere Peninsula Group they got some funding to do best practices in karst and affecting private water systems. So we're trying to leverage these partnerships or work with other groups because we don't have a lot of time or resources to go towards this this issue. But the flip side of that is we just received word from the province that they're looking to fund some work for municipalities to go and sort of get a better understanding of the private or non-municipal systems that might be out there in their municipality, that there's concerns. And then as a result of this analysis to do what they're calling water protection action plans. So it's like sort of like a source protection plan light. What would, you know, what you could do for less money to identify an area of concern, identify the risks, and then implement some actions at the municipal level or whatever partner level to affect change. And so it's an interesting opportunity. We sent this out to the municipalities. We're thinking there might be a few municipalities that are interested. We're going to have to like connect with staff on it because they may not even know what to ask for or what the scope of this type of work might entail. So unfortunately, there's pretty tight timelines. We just found out about it. We didn't know about it until it was announced. But hopefully, if there's interest out there, we can help support any applications for this funding.
Thank you, Carl. Is that everything for report 6A? Thank you very much. May I have a mover and a seconder to accept his information? Oh, sorry, you have another question? Sorry. Member Farmer? No, I thought I did.
Thank you. Through the chair, just if we are trying to amplify that opportunity to municipalities, how's that information being shared? Is that something that we should be individually taking back if that applies to our municipal water systems, or is that something that should be shared through the county, or that you've already emailed and this is a redundant question?
It's a good question. So it's gone to all the clerks to bring to councils for their awareness. And I think the intent now is to start our kind of consultation as well with staff at the staff level for some interest that if there's other local issues that they may already be aware of or are already working on or considering, that might be appropriate for this type of funding. So we don't have any projects ready to go, so to speak, but I think that's we would need to find a municipality who's already kind of thinking of something that's sort of ready to hit the road for us to partner or support.
Member Greg?
Thanks. Just a quick question, Carl. There's language under the Auditor General portion, overseen by MOH posing a public health risk. Is that their language or is that your language? Because you could have the insertion of potential public health risk. I think of online gambling sites, deregulation of liquor controls in the grocery stores, approval of a fast food restaurant by municipality. There's a number of items that you could just gather data that shows a public health risk. So is that their language or our language and not having the word potential in there?
Yeah, so that was pulled from the Auditor General's report, and that was one of the recommendations, and it was specific to the systems that the Ministry of Health oversees and regulates, so private drinking water systems. And it was flagging that not all of those private systems or small drinking water systems are known, so to speak, and being inspected. And so if they're not, then they could pose a health risk. That was the language.
Member Mackey?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Carl, just so I'm getting this clear, is this for individual drinking water systems? Like for my own well, or is this for more communal type systems that would be in a rural area? And I guess further to that, what is the potential? Well, I'll let you answer that before maybe I don't have a second question. Thanks.
So it can apply to any like non-municipal, so those would be like the schools that are on a well, or the health facilities that are on a well, to small, which could be like campgrounds, to private, which could be your well. And the intent there is the municipality has an area of interest where there are concerns communally or as a group, where there's an area of focus that they would want to look at more closely, and they want to come up with action plans to deal with it.
So my understanding was regulated facilities, campgrounds are already included in the Clean Water Drinking Act. So the only difference I would see here would be the private individual well. And if it is going to include private individual wells, what is the potential to affect agriculture going forward? For example, I'm pasturing cattle on my property, but there's a house that's been severed off and has a well. Is there a potential impact to the agricultural community with these further steps?
Yeah, it's a good question. So right now we currently in the source protection plan regulate the municipal system. So the big systems are covered. The smaller non-municipal, like a campground, could fall outside of that right now. So we don't have all of those in a protection zone. It is just the municipal ones. This work really, I think, is targeted at getting the municipalities some ability to better understand. May I use the example of Lake Eugenia? Maybe that helps to focus it. So the municipality of Grey Highlands, is looking at Lake Eugenia and the people that are around that lake that are taking water, using water, that as a community might benefit from some action plans to better manage impacts to that lake. I don't know if that's just a scenario I can think of. I don't see it being, we can't go to and deal with every private well in a municipality collectively and come up with action plans that would satisfy everybody. I think that would be very complicated. I think part of this work is doing a risk assessment, and the risk assessment tells you where are my biggest threats and risks, and where should I put measures to protect those. And unless you have an area that a lot of private wells are being impacted, then you may not be concerned about that.
Go ahead.
One thing that I would bring up too is I think the idea here is that this is a funding opportunity, so it won't change the source protection plans. It won't change the work that Grey Sauble Conservation Authority or the Saugeen Grey Sauble North Bruce Source Protection Authority or committee will deal with. It's just that we're available to provide support, and this would be a municipally led initiative, and there's funding available.
It really is the province making funding available to municipalities if they're interested.
Member Day.
Thank you. I'm aware of the funding opportunity in the short timeline, and I also know that some of our constituents would probably like us to make use of funding opportunities like this. I've heard concerns around increasingly intensive agriculture, not that we need food, so we need to support agriculture and do it properly, as well as industrial runoff in Georgian Bluffs and long-term concerns about the quality of private well water. And I think those are good, like once the quality of well water is damaged, it might not be something that is possible to repair sometimes within a reasonable time frame. I hear those concerns, and I also look at our staff capacity and the job descriptions that our staff hold, and I don't know that we have the right people in place to take advantage of a funding opportunity like this. So I don't know if you see any connections to positions already, even municipalities, but I'd point out that challenge that municipalities face, given that this isn't necessarily part of what municipal work has always included.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And that's, the timing is the challenge here because we don't have as much time to actively go out and talk to everybody and let everybody know or to have a meeting to understand what your local problems might be. So yeah, it is going to be a challenge to take advantage of this. Hopefully this isn't the first and last time that we hear about this type of funding, and we'll bring the message back to the ministry and say, great idea, but very short on time frames, which would affect our ability for the municipalities to apply.
Thank you, Carl. You have follow-up?
I concur that that would be a great message to send back to the ministry, because it does feel like an opportunity that will be missed through many municipalities, just because there is not time to respond within a reasonable municipal timeframe.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else for Carl? Sorry, Member Maxwell.
Thank you. Carl, I just have a question, and you tell me if I'm in there. So, are we talking only about drilled wells or surface water as well, or can I ask that question first?
Yeah, essentially like any non-municipal. So think of any other drinking water source that's not a municipality.
Okay, and the next question is, so who currently regulates like groundwater and you're drilling wells and that? I just
Yeah, maybe if I share the Auditor General's report, like it does kind of spell it out in terms of a little more detail about Ministry of Health regulates the private ones, Ministry of Environment regulates non-municipal and small, and there's a whole list of the types of systems that they independently regulate.
Any follow-up? Good. All right. Then seeing no other questions, I'm going to make a recommendation that the Gray Sauble Source Protection Authority receives the program report 6A for information. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Winter and Member Farmer, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to point 6B. And Carl again, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So the Gray Sauble is the lead source protection authority. just wanted to remind you folks that, and that's why this report is here. Essentially, the appointment of Source Protection Committee members formally is appointed through Gray Sauble. We had a members, the environmental sector representative was due for renewal or replacement. Dan Orr is the current active member who is willing to stay on. He's been a strong member. He comes from the Ministry of Environment from a technical perspective and lots of experience with municipalities. Through the management committee, we had a meeting on the 8th of September, and they recommended the appointment of Dan Orr. And now we're here for your formal appointment.
Thank you, Carl. I'll put it on the floor. Recommendation that the Gray Sauble Source Protection Authority appoints the following Source Protection Committee member pursuant to OREG 288/07, Section 3, under the Clean Water Act 2006, Public Environmental Sector, Dan Orr. Any questions or comments from the floor? Actually, could I have a mover and a seconder? Sorry. Member Gregg and Member Day. Any questions or comments to the motion? Seeing nothing, then I request a vote. And all in favor? And that is passed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carl. Is there any other business at this point? And seeing nothing, thank you very much. Confirmation next meeting, it'll be called at time, and we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Gray Sauble Conservation Authority Full Authority meeting of Wednesday, September 24th. And I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask Vice Chair Dubik if you would do the honors of the acknowledgement.
We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples.
Thank you, Nadia. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? And seeing nothing, move on to call for additional agenda items. Seeing nothing again. The adoption of the agenda, move that the Gray Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors approve the agenda of September 24th, 2025. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Winters, Member Gregg, and all in favor. That is carried. Thank you very much. Approval of the minutes of the July 23rd, 2025 meeting. I move that the Gray Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors approve the full authority minutes. I did that backwards. My apologies. I meant to do the agenda first. I think, did I do the agenda first? I apologize. Okay, moving on to the minutes. Thank you very much. It's one of those days. Yeah, this is interesting that says, my main notes say July 23rd, I apologize. So the meetings, minutes of August 27th to 2025. So that is the minutes we're approving. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Vice Chair Dubik, Member Farmer. Any questions, comments on the minutes? Seeing nothing, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. No business out of the minutes at this time, so move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything from the consent agenda? And seeing nothing, thank you. Move on that in consideration of the consent agenda items listed on the September 24th, 2025 agenda, the Gray Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors receives the following items. 1. Environmental planning, section 28 permits, August 2025. 2. Administration receipts and expenses, August 2025. 3. Minutes of the Friends of Haibu, November 5th, 2024. And 5. Recent media articles. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Farmer, Member Mackey, thank you very much. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Move on to the business items under administration, the subcommittee review. Is that Tim? Take it away, CAO Lantier. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to take a second to get this in front of me here, but so as discussed earlier in the year, I had let the board know that we intended to bring back the current committees and some ideas for potential committees before the board so that we could have a discussion to see what's working or not working with the current committees. Do we need to change those structures? And is there anything missing in terms of making sure that the work of the authority and our strategic initiatives are being achieved? So the report that you've been provided with provides some background on the existing committees that we have within the authority. It also looks forward at some potential committees, and these are really just to get the gears going, to put something in front of you to for consideration, not that we necessarily need or any of those particular committees, but just so that you have that for your consideration. What I'd like to do then is just garner discussion today and get some information from you. And from there, we can decide whether you as the board want to answer questions about those specific committees today, or whether you'd rather have that offline in terms of a survey or something similar. And then we'll bring back a follow-up report to finalize things at the October or November meeting. So what I'll do for starters is I'll just go through the various committees identified in the report, and then we can have a bit of dialogue on it through the chair if that's acceptable to the board. So currently we have 3 committees that the board has essentially created. These are the Agricultural Advisory Committee. So this is intended to serve as a channel to connect the agricultural community with the board of directors and the work that Gray Sauble does. We have had challenges since the inception of the committee with having appropriate and sufficient materials for the committee to consider to have, 4 meetings a year versus 1. Sometimes it may seem a bit contrived to make up the material for the meetings. And so what we would recommend going forward, pending discussion with the board and how the board feels about the committee, is that the terms of reference for the committee maybe be updated to make it at the call of the chair, so that meetings would revolve around having material as opposed to trying to develop material to revolve around preset meetings. We have a forestry committee for the Conservation Authority. We run into similar issues with this committee in terms of having material that is relevant for the committee to hear. And so this committee actually hasn't met in several years. One of the intended purposes of the committee is to provide strategic direction for forestry work. And certainly the committee would play a big role in the development of the forest management plan. But once that forest management plan is developed, it essentially provides that direction. And there's not a lot of material to meet about. But again, one thing that we can consider as a board is, do we want to revise the terms of reference for that and consider, does this committee do something different, or is this committee needed at all at this point? And for both of those committees, our staff lead on those is Mike Fry, and Mike is on the meeting virtually today to help aid in the discussion if needed as we go through it. The third committee of the board that we have is our Indigenous and GSCA's Relationship Committee. This committee was established to foster non-goal oriented relationships, to enhance engagement, and to provide learning opportunities. Again, we face the same challenge. This is a theme with the committees of the authority, is that if we have predetermined we're going to have 4 or 5 or 6 meetings a year, we do struggle to have relevant materials for those meetings. And again, there might be benefit in rethinking the terms of reference to make the meetings revolve around materials instead of the other way around. That being said, staff are keen. We have a staff member in particular that's keen to reinvigorate this committee. And we have had initial discussions with the board members that sit on this committee, and there was definitely an appetite by those board members to keep the committee going as well. So I would recommend, again, updating the terms of reference at the committee level and bringing that back to the board of directors, since we do have active participation in that committee. So those are the existing ones. There are some others that are listed in the report, but those committees would essentially either exist in the absence of a board member being present, like the Inglis Falls Arboretum Alliance. There's one board member that sits on that. The Grey Sauble Conservation Foundation, as you're aware, is dissolving at the end of the year, so I didn't see the need to go into great detail on that entity. The Drinking Water Source Protection Management Committee, the membership on that committee is predetermined. It's the chair, the vice chair, and the CAO. And the same is for Conservation Ontario Council. The voting members are in order: the chair, the vice chair, and the CAO. Some potential committees that I've put into the report for consideration of the board to see, would this fill a gap for the authority, or do you see a need for it? Would be a finance committee. And the purpose of the finance committee would be to assist management in the development of annual budgets, to be involved with the audit process to the degree that that's necessary, and then also to replace several ad hoc committees that spring up related to this theme. Those would be when we go out for auditor selection once every 5 years. We usually put together an ad hoc committee, but this committee could serve in that place. When we do a benefits review, when we do salary review, that could be the purpose of a committee such as the finance committee for the authority. I did note in the report a conservation lands committee, and we're looking at this idea internally to see what would work, what could work, where it could land. And we don't have any answers on that yet, but that would be more of a community-based committee that would provide a way to bring ideas into the community. So recognizing that obviously a staff of 28 can't have all the answers for all of the areas that we own. So we're looking at that, and would come back to the board with that in the future if we can get some sort of concept built around it. I've identified here a hearing board of the authority. So the Conservation Authorities Act allows you as a board to delegate some of your powers under Section 28 of the Act, which is our development regulations section, to any one person or group. And so permit approvals are delegated to the staff level. The hearing board, which would be the entirety of the board in absence of that delegation of power, could be delegated to an executive committee if one existed, or could be delegated to a smaller subset of the board that would become the hearing board. The benefit of this is that we were facing having a hearing this summer, and granted, I recognize summer is a more challenging time to get people together, but we were really struggling to get quorum to have that hearing, and we're under specific legislated timelines as to how long we have to make a decision as the authority before the proponent or the applicant can essentially bypass us by going to the OLT or the minister directly. I've put on here an executive committee. I know this idea has come before the board before and there has not been an appetite for it, but not saying that we need one or we don't need one, just putting it on there as an option. Essentially, the idea behind an executive committee is that it would serve to act as the board in between meetings if there are time sensitive things that can't wait a full month. We do not have a lot of precedence of that happening here. But it could also act in lieu of a hearing board or a finance committee or a governance committee or all of those committees. You could have an executive committee that could take on all those functions. Potential governance and policy committee, whose role would be to recommend updates to the admin bylaws and review those, to inform board orientation and training, and to develop and oversee board and CAO performance evaluations. And finally, the last one that we've listed here is a fundraising and volunteer committee. So as I've just mentioned, and as you know, our foundation is dissolving at the end of the year. Members of the Gray Sauble Conservation Foundation have expressed an interest in still participating at a committee level, which would be less onerous than running a board of directors and running the foundation. And so put on here the opportunity to potentially have a fundraising and volunteering committee that could act as a replacement for some of the work that the foundation was doing, could work to align donors with our strategic priorities, and could be made up of board members, staff members, and community members who are looking to engage the public to help fundraise and drive volunteerism for the authority. So with that, through you, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to open the floor to the board and any discussion that there is. I did pose some questions in the body of the report related to the existing committees and potential future committees. And like I mentioned, I'm happy to go over those one by one right now, or we could do it in an offline survey type form and then collate that information and bring it back to the board at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Accordingly, I will open it to the floor. Does anybody have any questions to Tim? Member Mackey.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And through you to Tim, Member Day and I were at a foundation meeting yesterday, and the foundation made it very clear that their probably number one priority is to see the Memorial Forest Program continue. So both Tobin and I said that we would pass that along to the board. We recommended that the existing foundation maybe delegate to the board just to express that desire, but that was the impression that we got. If moving forward, they would really like, there's members of the existing foundation that would like to see that program continue and are willing to dedicate their time and effort as they have in the past towards that continuing on. So I just wanted to bring that forth on behalf of the foundation. I sit on a few of these boards. I just briefly speak to the agricultural board. I'm wondering if it would be worthwhile Gray County has an agriculture advisory committee, and I also sit on it, and there's a lot of crossover between the two. I'm wondering if possibly if we had representation from Gray Sauble on, well, I guess we do. Mr. Reed is on that committee. We could alleviate possibly because there's a number of members that sit on both. We could maybe alleviate the Gray Sauble Advisory Committee if there's a time slot on the agenda of the Gray County Agriculture Advisory Committee. Everyone's time is important, and we want agriculture to have a voice on some of the things that are happening, and we have a fairly robust agenda with the agricultural committee at Gray. It meets typically about every 3 months. So I think it would be worth reaching out to Gray County to see if there could be an amalgamation, and that might eliminate one of our committees. Forestry, sat on it for a number of years and I can only remember one or two meetings. So I guess I fail to see what value really having that committee is offering. But anyways, those are my brief comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Do you want to comment first before I go to other questions, or that's fine? Member Day.
If I might build on the previous member's comments about the foundation, thank you so much for bringing that forward. I just wanted to confirm like the memorial forest is very important to those folks, and I believe there's still energy within that volunteer group if they had the right way of contributing, the right committee or forum, then I think there would be people power behind that. The student awards were also important. The Malcolm Kirk Awards and the Conservation Awards, whose exact name is escaping me. The Earth Film Festival and Earth Day Hike, just for clarity, I don't think there's energy within that group to maintain those. So there is questions about what is desired by the board, as well as what is possible within the staff and desired and possible within the Gray Sauble Conservation staff to see those events go forward or not.
CAO.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we certainly recognize that the foundation has expressed an interest with the Memorial Forest, and they've certainly put a lot of energy into it. And that is something that we can consider internally to see, can we keep that running and what does that look like? One of the challenges we were facing there is the land base. So we have to continue to look and see, is there another location where we can expand to, because we are running out of space to physically plant the trees. We do know that internally there may be a desire from our education department to pick up the film festival and run that as an education event. So that could be a real positive. And I think possibly the Earth Day hike as well, and see if it's possible to expand that out. But granted, understanding that the foundation members don't need to be involved in that if they don't choose to. The item about the student awards, that would be a challenge, I think, for the Conservation Authority to carry on, because I'm not sure where the money would come from to give out to students. It falls outside of the mandate of the Conservation Authority. So that would require direction from the board and a source funding to enable us to do that forward.
Sorry, go ahead.
Another piece of the puzzle is the current holdings of the Gray Sauble Conservation Foundation accounts would be donated to Gray Sauble Conservation Authority. So that money is currently is categorized for the different programs, including education and bursaries. So I think the foundation members are very aware that as that money becomes Conservation Authority money, there's no guarantee that it will be used, no necessary guarantee it will be used for the original intention, especially if it falls outside of the mandate. But there is hope, and there is acknowledgement that people sometimes donated that money with a specific goal in mind. So trying to honor the original donors and what the money was donated for. And we would have to check with the foundation again, but I feel like there was a sizable donation this year and investments that some of the foundation members perceive could be, who do know the accounts better than I, that could be used to sustain a student award going forward. But again, I hear the point about the mandate, and that's a really important piece of the puzzle as well. So just considerations for looking forward. I also just I'd bring up timing for Memorial Forest, because trees are still being sold this year and the foundation will dissolve in sometime in the winter. So there's very strong hopes to have a celebration again in June to acknowledge those who have purchased trees this calendar year.
Thank you, Member Dubick. Member Day, Member Dubick, please.
Thank you. And just to continue to build on that conversation, so as we do think about some of those community events, and as been outlined in the report, for consideration is the fundraising volunteer committee, because but trying to bring folks in to continue on with some of these types of ideas is definitely a way forward.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Member Maxwell.
I actually got that right. I just got a question. Would it be possible for the fundraising committee to bring new initiatives to the table that are potentially tied to conservation lands? I was thinking about Condens Dam in particular. Who do I address that question to?
I think I just need some clarification, Member Maxwell, on what your question is that you're seeking.
The fundraising criteria here for the volunteer committee, it kind of focuses on Memorial Forest Program and Earth Film Festival, but then it says down below in another paragraph that it's open to other suggestions, basically. And I'm just wondering if there was any possibility the fundraising committee could potentially raise funds that are earmarked for conservation lands other than what's stated here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. Absolutely. Yeah, the idea with this was just to recognize that there's a gap being created by the loss of the Great Sauble Conservation Foundation, and proposing a potential committee that could fill that gap. And then obviously that committee could go in whatever direction they chose. So if it was to raise funds for Great Sauble lands, um, absolutely. I can't see why not. At this point, it's just everything's very, very high level to bring the concepts forward.
And presumably the terms of reference would define that, and that's going to have to be established. So, correct. Are there any other questions? Member Farmer.
Thank you. Through the chair, broadly, first, I would appreciate a chance to provide some more thoughtful, detailed responses in some sort of electronic format. I think that there are, because this, as was just said, this is a high level suggestion and a point of, yeah, as one of my roommates in university said, we stand today at a crossroads. And I think that of all the possible roads ahead of us on any number of these topics, that there are different requirements for time and like human resources, for financial resources, but also as I think about what the fundraising volunteer committee would look like. And if I was going to walk out these doors today and pitch to someone, you should volunteer with Great Sauble, or your business should donate things to a raffle, or you should give us $1 million. I don't know that I would have a really good elevator pitch on what is currently, like what that would entail. I could talk about Friends of Haibu. I think that's a really scoped and clear volunteer, like associated volunteer group, and the Beaver watershed. No, I get the watershed initiative that helps with that river over there. But things like that I think are scoped and clear and adjacent to the work of the Conservation Authority. I wouldn't have a good pitch though for why someone should leave their inheritance to an analogous foundation or like fund. And I think we kind of need that. And as I think about what the scope then of fundraising and volunteer committees could be and how that might overlap with a conservation lands committee, or how a policy committee, like a policy committee could be supported if we are talking about policies specifically related to management of lands and partnership with community organizations or gifts of lands. I think there's a lot here to consider. And I know that it takes a lot of work to keep group of volunteers engaged and organized and fired up. And if we are talking about that, which I think it's worth doing, I think we as a board should be thinking about scoping that and the amount of time that we ourselves have to participate in that. Because I think that people care really deeply about like especially the conservation lands in their own backyards, and that we see people developing really regular relationships, and like there's like the arboretum and that property, there are people who walk their dogs there 6 days a week and who might be particularly interested in supporting that more than a kind of high level coastal management project, or the kind of general awareness raising, depending on how we're focusing that, considering that there are other community groups like the field naturalists and BPEG and different groups that are rowing in the same direction. And I think that's a big question and one worth exploring. I don't know that we can do it in the formal kind of structure of a meeting like this, though. Those are my rambling thoughts.
Thank you, John. Yeah, and I believe that that's the point of this, is very high level, and I would think that the report would come back to look for direction on coming up with terms of reference to define exactly what that's going to look like. So yeah, I think this is more high principle support of moving forward in theory with these concepts, and then digging down in the weeds later to actually define that. Go ahead.
Again, through the chair, I'm just curious, when I think about the difference between an executive board committee and kind of what we do month by month, I'm curious whether that idea comes from the models that other conservation authorities are using. Knowing that when I hear executive committee, I think of volunteer organizations where that's the treasurer and the chair, and they're doing very scoped but also more intensive work. And I think that generally we're, with the exception of a few votes, the board is mostly on a one person, one vote kind of basis. And I wonder how that kind of an executive committee might shift the depth of conversation and understanding that we would collectively have. But are there models where that's working really well? And I'm just not imagining that beyond a lawn bowling club.
Thank you. Yes, understanding that some conservation authorities have boards made up of 20 or 30 members as well, I think is an important thing to highlight. The Act itself identifies the ability of an authority to have an executive committee, which is predominantly why I put it in there. So with any options report, you're always going to put all of the options on the table. So that's why that one's in there. But certainly we've had discussions about an executive committee before the board in the past, and similar items have come up. So like I said, the one advantage of an executive committee would be the flexibility to, gather 4 people together is easier than to gather 11 people together if you needed to mid-month. But the reality is that that hasn't been a pressing need for this board, which is why then I also identified that, if there was an appetite for an executive committee, it could also then serve the function of several other committees that are listed here, and it just be one committee that does all those things. So just trying to get a few different options, and like I said, to get the gears going. And have that dialogue to see, what do we need? What does the board want? It might be that the board doesn't want any committees at all. And I guess that's an option I could have put on here too. But I think it's important that we have this discussion, we talk about it, and we make sure that we're using everybody's time as efficiently as possible to get the work that we need to get done.
Any other member Greg?
My only point is, thanks for bringing the report forward today, and anything in the future is great, taking into the consideration what you hear. I'm fully supportive of the whole board, though, for maintaining a hearing board committee. I think it does neutralize any possibility of local municipal representation if you do anything otherwise. Should you get an extraordinary event come forward, that was really my only comments to make. I'm totally in support of that. And yeah, if you bring something back, just responding to the feedback, great. But yeah, I think just getting rid of the forestry committee when you don't have any meetings, or ensuring that you're just meeting at the call of the chair when you've got materials is just smart management. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Member Mackey.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The only other committee that, or new committee that has been identified here would be the Finance Committee. And I think a Finance Committee would be a great spot for the board to go. Most municipalities have a Finance Committee. Grey County has a Finance Committee, and the role is to dig down deeper than what would typically occur at a council meeting in regards to specific budgetary items. So it allows members to get into the weeds a little deeper than, and then the rest of the board has a confidence that certain things have been looked at. So the budget process, there's more confidence, I guess, in the budget process. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Any other questions? Seeing nothing, I just have two quick things. One is from a time perspective, when are you kind of thinking that a report would come back on this? And the reason I ask that is the more germane question, this is more of an edification for my purposes. Next year's an election year. So our own municipality, I know our municipalities, we start to stop our advisory committees around March of an election year. So I don't know whether that has any impact on this kind of body, whether you look at the same concepts about going into an election year and lame duck councils and making decisions. So is there been any thought about authority and having elected officials making decisions, committees, recommendations on that to this body in an election year as well?
Thanks. Yeah, this is a relevant question given where we're at. I think in terms of when this would come back, I'd like to get all the data and the feedback from the board in short order so that we can bring something back, hopefully in October. If there was any revision to committees, that could take place at the AGM. So they would be just not filled if we're dissolving or getting rid of them. And if there are any new ones, they would be filled at that time. No concerns under the Conservation Authorities Act about lame duck, such that we would be shutting things down early. The history of the board is to continue making decisions as long as board members are assigned and sitting on this board. Understanding that come November, we may not have committees filled for a month or a month and a half, given that end of year piece, but that's fine because we would refill them at the AGM again.
Member Day.
Thank you. Perhaps on the flip side of your comment, Chair, the Governance and Policy Committee, if struck, would look at orientation and training, which might be a good thing for this board to look at to set up the next board for success over their term, whoever might be on that.
Good point. Thank you. Anything else? Seeing nothing, then I will move that whereas a review of existing and potential board of directors committees is a deliverable in the 2025 to 2035 strategic plan. And whereas staff have prepared this report and solicited feedback from the board of directors, that staff be directed to consider the feedback from the board of directors and prepare a final report for the October meeting of the board of directors. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Mackey and Member Farmer. All in favor. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Oh, Member Mackey.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering with leave of the board, whether or not we could move the closed session up. I do have to depart at 3 o'clock and I would like to participate and hear the discussion around the closed session. So I guess I ask for the indulgence of the board to move that forward if it's all right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Mackey. Just for the official policy on how to do that, Valerie.
I think it. Yeah, I think if we have 2/3 support of the board, that's.
All in favor of moving up the closed session to the present? And Member Dubik, seconder, sorry, thank you very much. That was all in favor, so we will move to the open session or closed session now. Thank you.